A worthy goal for a year is to learn enough about a subject so that you can believe how ignorant you were a year earlier. This is Kevin Kelly. In this new episode, we feature an interview Kevin Kelly about the wisdom he would wish known earlier. Welcome to Disrupt Yourself and Stand Out from Yourself. This is Disrupt Everything podcast series, the 1% League, and I'm your host, Isra Garcia. And here today, Kevin Kelly. Kevin, thank you for being in Disrupt Everything podcast series, and welcome.
It's my pleasure and my honor, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Welcome to Disrupt podcast series, the podcast of reinvention, of disruption, of ultra productivity, of high performance. This is a space for decoding the limits of human potential and what it means to live an extraordinary life. A creative project built in 2017 and designed to destroy the perfect, enable the improbable, and demonstrate that in practice is possible what seemed impossible in theory. A series of episodes that piece together and dissect the big keys of guests like Kevin Kelly, the top 1% of the world's biggest disruptors, leaders and teachers and masters, making that 1% accessible to the remaining 90% of us. Today, we talk about excellent advice for living. Bites that Kevin Kelly has put together in more than, if I recall well, 60 years. And it's a story that very interesting because when you go through the book, you see that it ranges from family, ideas, tools, investments, like covers all topics which we will try to cover in this interview as much as we can. And I would love to start with a great way to understand yourself is to seriously reflect on everything you find irritating in others. Kevin Kelly is senior maverick in Wired magazine. He co-founded it in 1993 and served as executive editor in the first 7 years. His new book is Excellent Advice for Living, a book of 450 modern proverbs of good living. He is also co-chair of the Long Now Foundation, a membership of organization that champions long-term thinking and act as a good ancestor to future generations, which is building a clock in a mountain that will take for 10,000 years. Something that we covered in our first interview that I will leave it in the podcast show notes. He's founder of the popular Cool Tools website, which has been reviewing tools for more than 20 years and has a weekly newsletter called Recommendo, a free one-page list of 6 very brief recommendations of cool stuff. He co-founded the ongoing Hackers Conference. He was involved in the launch of Well, a pioneering online service started in 1985. And other books by Kevin Kelly include The Inevitable, Out of Control, The Silver Cord, What Technology Wants, and Vanishing Asia, his 50-year project to photograph the disappearing cultures of Asia. He has written for the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, among many other publications. And he's best known for his radical optimism about the future. Draw to discover what you see, and write to discover what you think. Kevin, one more time, welcome. And what have you seen drawing and what you have discovered writing?
Oh, I see. Yeah, so one of my bits of advice is to write in order to think and to draw in order to see. That the act of writing will actually provide you with ideas rather than just trying to take an idea and write it down. It will give you ideas. And then drawing, painting, art will enable you to see things that you don't ordinarily see. It's not like you see them and paint them. The act of trying to draw it will enable you to see. So a lot of my ideas, talking about technology, are ideas I did not have when I sat down to write. It was the act of writing them that produced the idea. And the same thing when I'm sit down to paint or draw, which I do. I try to release one a day. The act of actually sitting down and drawing something will force me to look, and that looking, I see something. So the drawing, the trying to draw it, then I see it once I draw it. So this says that there's, what's the word I want? It's a way of living outside of our brain, or making our brain extend into our senses. So in order to really have ideas, we need to employ our eyes, our hands. They are very connected to our brain. They're not really separate worlds. So taking a walk is a great way to think. Taking notes with your hands is a great way to think. Using a camera, using paints is a great way to see. So we're more than just our brain. We're the brain plus the hand plus the foot plus the eye.
What would you say is the most effective way to get out effective ideas from your mind to the real world action? Let's put it that way.
Right. So trying to put something down to words, trying to make a prototype. You can, if you're trying to make something physical, you could think about it for weeks, months. You might even make some drawings. That's helpful. Once you start to draw it, you can begin to make it real. But the next step is to make a prototype, make it out of cardboard, make it out of string, make it something that's very crude and fast. And that act of trying to put it into the physical world will teach you so much more than thinking about it will. So you can only go so far in thinking. And then bringing that into the world, birthing it, having interact with use, having other people try and interact with it, all those things, having someone else read your words will take it from something that's perfect in your mind to the imperfect of the real world. But the real world is imperfect. So in some ways, what you're trying to do is you want to imperfect your idea. Okay? Because initially the idea is perfect, but you want to imperfect it by making it real. And as you make it imperfect, it becomes real.
I got when I was going through the 450 bytes, I like the bytes thing. I find it so interesting that I decided to build the part, like 70% of this interview around some of the bytes. So I will be recalling some bytes and I will ask you a question. So one of these is life lessons will be presented to you in the order they are needed. Everything you need to master the lesson is within you. Once you have truly learned a lesson, you will be presented with the next one. If you are alive, that means you have lessons to learn. Kevin Kelly. So 2 questions from here. What are the most important life lessons within you that you consider that have mastered, and what are the ones still to be mastered?
I could answer the second ones. I have no idea what the ones are coming. I don't know. But the ones I have mastered, I think I have mastered gratitude, meaning that I fully understand the value and necessity and the foundation of gratitude, meaning that I think gratitude is the foundational virtue out of which all the other virtues come, from empathy to honesty, etc. And so I think I've mastered that, and therefore I can progress on to the next thing. I think I have mastered the skill or the lesson that we need to be able to change our mind, being open to changing our mind, being adaptable in that sense of learning something new, admitting that we're wrong, going on to say, I've learned something. I've changed my mind. I've progressed. So, in a certain sense, to stay young, you want to keep changing your mind. And so, being able to change your mind is important. And one of the lessons about learning how to change your mind is that you don't want to have your identity fixed on your opinions or on your views, because then you can't change your mind. But you want your identity to be fixed on your values and your character, which is not going to change. Okay, so if your identity is ideological, and you make your identity around your ideological beliefs and opinions, then it becomes very, very hard to change, because then you're having to change your identity, which is very difficult to do, and we do it very slowly. Instead, you want to have your identity based on what you stand for in terms of values, basic things, whether it's the virtues, it's empathy, or if it's honesty, whatever it is. Those should never change, and therefore you can make your identity wrapped around those.
What would you say are the core virtues of Kevin Kelly today?
Well, I am I'm honest. That was a kind of a vow I took, to be always to be radically honest. And I have learned to be consistently grateful. And I think the other virtues might be kindness, which I stress in the book. It's better to be kind than right. And that's a hard lesson to learn, but it's very, very powerful if you can arrive there. And so I feel I have learned that lesson, and now I can move on to becoming more compassionate. So, what else have I learned? A lesson. I think I've learned a lesson about money. I learned that money is just fuel that will help you get to the next place, but it's not a destination. I like the bit of advice that I first heard from Walt Disney, who said, "We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make movies." And that encapsulates. I don't create to make money. I make money so that I can create. So the creation is the destination. That is the goal. You just need enough money to be able to do that, not to accumulate the money. And so, I kind of as a kid, I was much more attracted to the wisest person rather than the richest person. I felt that wisdom to me is a kind of a long-term perspective. It's the perspective of the long term. It's kind of saying I have a perspective, an elevated perspective of where I'm going, and that's what I would call wise. It's an understanding that you want to be focused on the long term rather than immediate what happens today. It's like the old marshmallow test. You've heard that with the kids. You give a kid, you say, here's 2 marshmallows or whatever. Here's 1 marshmallow. If you don't eat it, you can have in 5 minutes or whatever, you can have another one. And it's the ability to kind of postpone that, to take a longer view. The longer view is they're going to have a whole bag of marshmallows at the end, or going to have one immediately. And if you can kind of go, then you say that's a wise choice. Okay? You're taking a longer view. So I've always been attracted to that, not the richest person, but the wisest person.
And how does it feel now, going that way, being there?
Well, so here's the thing: is that this is a lifelong journey. This is not a destination. This is a direction. And I like to tell people, that young people especially, something I wished I'd known earlier was, don't try and be the best thing, the best in the world, the best golf player, the best chef, the best guitar player, because it's already occupied. There's already a number one there, and that role is very, very prescribed and already, as I said, somebody's already there, and it's very, very unlikely that you or I will have the right combination of talents and skills and life experiences to ever be in that number one position, which only one person can be in. But it's much, much easier and much better, and you'll be much happier if you aim to be the only of something, the only person doing this, the only person who can do this, the only person who would want to do this. Okay? And that thing that made you as a weird kid can make you as great as an adult if you don't lose it and you can actually pursue it and make it come deeper and truer. But that is a very high bar. That becoming the only, going in that direction is a very high bar, and it will take all your life. You will never really arrive there. I have not arrived there. Jeff Bezos has not arrived there. It takes most of your life to kind of keep going in that direction of always trying to become more fully yourself, because it's very hard for us to understand what it is. And it's particularly hard when you're young. When you're first starting off, very few of us know what it is that we're better at. With most people, it's occasionally somebody is born knowing, but most of us, it takes trying many different things, which is why we want to have an open mind. It's why we want to explore, is to see if we can find those right kinds of tools, those right kinds of experiences, the right kind of role that really resonates with us. And if you look at anybody who's remarkable, if you look at their life, it's not a straight line. It's like a meandering thing full of turns and setbacks and detours, because they're on the way. It's not evident to anybody. You have to try all these things. Those are necessary.
Experiment.
They're absolutely necessary to get there. And so, none of us have arrived. It's a direction where we keep moving in that general direction of trying to become more truly ourselves and what we do best. And having been around, again, some remarkable people, some of the richest people on the planet, I have to tell you that having $1 billion does not answer that question. Okay?
Yeah, right. That's
and
right.
It actually makes it harder in many ways to answer the question. So to your listeners, I have a bit of advice. They may not want to hear it, but my advice is, if at all possible, try as hard as you can to not have $1 billion. All right? Promise me that you won't have $1 billion, okay? Because it will not help you on your journey.
Why is that?
Well, because it becomes a burden. It becomes a huge burden. It takes over your life. There's all these things you have to do. There's responsibilities for it. It's terrible for your children.
Mm.
It's very warping and distorting. It's terrible for trying to make friends. It's because people come to you for all kinds of things. You're in demand. People like you because you have a lot of money. They'll listen to you because you have a lot of money. And it's so big that you can't spend it. You literally can't spend it. And everything is free. And it distorts you on your journey to try and fully become yourself. And so I'm not saying that it necessarily will make you unhappy. I'm just saying that it is harder to find out who you are and to become that best person. And so that's why you want to avoid having $1 billion.
Like the Zen, right? The middle way.
Yeah.
Kevin, can you name one wisdom bite that surprised you for the depth of his message and why?
That surprised me? I
Yeah,
wrote
one of
these.
the you exactly one of the you while you are writing the book,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
one that you were writing that said, "Oh, wow, that surprised
Okay.
me. That was something."
Yeah. So that's a good question. Let's see. Something that surprised me. Well, a bit of advice that I did not expect, and this goes back to talking about money, was I came from a book, or actually, there's two books. One is called Die Broke. The other one is called something about zero, trying to make a zero money. I can't remember the exact title. They're both about this same thing. Here's the bit of advice that I wrote in my words: aim to die broke. Give to your beneficiaries before you die. It's because it's more fun and useful to them. In other words, spend it all. Your last check should go to the funeral home and it should bounce. So this is the idea of dying broke, of giving away everything before you die rather than leaving an inheritance and having it passed on. So it's not about like not giving to your children or whatever. It's just saying do it while you're alive because you have more control over it. It's more fun for you and it's better for them. And rather than leaving a lot behind and letting them sort it out and have the burden of it, you want to be able to work with them and trying to make this good. And so that was something I had never thought about and didn't really. I was surprised by, and it was not something I'd heard before. And so that was kind of aha, yeah, die broke.
um, that links with the next questions is you really don't want to be famous. Read read the biography of any famous person, which is linked with what we're saying. Well, my question here is, Kevin, why everyone? The other day, I listened Johnny Depp saying the problem with many of us is that we are so desperately to be us, but we
Yeah,
cannot be. So,
right.
why everyone wants to be somebody else and forgetting that they are
Yeah,
avoiding themselves? What's your take on that?
I think a lot of people want to be famous because they want to be valued. They want to be appreciated. They want to be respected. And many people struggle all their lives. They may begin perhaps in poverty with having nothing. Maybe they have very difficult personal problems that they need to overcome. And there is often a tendency to feel as if they don't count. Nobody values me. I don't count. I'm a little person. Nobody cares about me, whatever. And the solution seems to be, well, if I could become so good, whatever it is, that I become famous, then people are giving me the attention, the respect, the dignity that I crave. The problem is that that's not the solution. That fame is not the solution. I have a bit of advice, like it's better that you have 12 people who love you than 12 million people who like you. The likes are just, they're not effective. They're not powerful, really. They're more superficial, we would say. And that's what you get with fame. You get people who are know just some character of you, some part of you that's not the whole you. It's not necessarily even very representative of you. They can't possibly know you. They know a character, they know a persona, they have some image of you, and that's what they have when you're famous. And that's not fully you, but you can't do anything about it. You have no control over it. And so it's very, 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 very difficult to deal with that. And so I understand the craving to be recognized, to be counted, to be considered worthy. But you don't really want to aim for fame, because that is going to take you far from getting that. It's not the thing you want. It's better, as I said, to have a small group of people give you that kind of respect and dignity that you want, rather than having millions of it, because it's not going to solve your problem.
This is related with the very, very long and famous concept of the 1,000 true fans that
Sure.
we talking about in the last interview. That we will
Sure.
also post it in the podcast show notes. What are the last? When I finished reading the book, I had a question: is what are the last wisdom bits that you've got that you could not add at the book before publishing?
I have. I'm glad you asked, because I have a list of them. I have about looks like I have 30 more.
We
I
can
have
do the
30
second
more.
edition.
Yeah, I just can't help it. I had one of them actually recently, inspired by AI, artificial intelligence, and it's a little bit clunky. Part of what I do with my writing is try to take out words, to keep reducing it smaller and smaller, to make this a little bit of a mind grenade that can explode, or a little bit of a seed that can be unpacked. So this one, I haven't quite removed all the words yet, but let me read it. It says, "A worthy goal in life is to become impactful without becoming predictable. That is, do things that AIs have trouble imitating. You want to be unmoddable by algorithms, and therefore irreplaceable." So the idea is that AIs work on being able to predict what humans would do. That's they're autocomplete. They're just basically, they're saying, what would the average human say next, or what would a smart human say next, and they're kind of based on the predictability. So if you want to be irreplaceable as a human, you don't want to be predictable by AI. So you want to be unpredictable, to be unexpected. And so that should be a goal in life, is in some ways to not be predictable enough that you can be actually predicted and replaced by an AI.
Spontaneity also. As long another bite that really grabbed my attention. As long as an idea stays in your head, it is perfect. What is linked with the very beginning of the interview, but perfect things are never real. Immediately put an idea into words, or in a sketch, or a cardboard prototype. Now your idea is much closer to reality because it's imperfect. The question is, do you have any particular process to go from perfect idea in your mind to perfect idea, put it into the world, which is similar to what we're discussing before?
Yeah, it's, I have a notebook where I start to sketch out ideas, to try to put them into words. That's a first step of taking something that's abstract and trying to make it real. I have this saying in the book about prototype your life instead of making grand plans. Make experiments. Keep the failures little. Fail often. Fail fast. Fail forward. Fail better. You want to kind of keep the failures really small over time, moving forward. And that idea of prototyping, with the idea that you're going to make something that you're going to throw away. You know that you're going to throw it away, but you still go through and you make the process of making it. You make it maybe out of cardboard or plywood. You make a first draft of a book. You're not going to keep the first draft. It's going to go away. You do a song. You do a rough scratch, they call it, of the song. If you're doing a movie, you make an animated version of it that you'll just completely throw away. Okay, so you're moving, iterating forward, with the idea that these things from the beginning are imperfect. And so the only way you get to perfection is through the iterating of the imperfect. You can't just start with something on the first try and make it perfect. It just doesn't, we're just not built that way. It's not good enough. And so for me, yeah, I'll do drafts. I often will write things out loud on my blog first. I'll put things out. I get feedback from people. I can see what works and what doesn't work. Then I can go to the next one and making an essay. I when I'm doing drawings, I do sketches. You do a sketch before you do a painting. You sketch it out. It's there's very few really good things that are not made incrementally by progressions of things. The idea of Picasso, even Picasso didn't. If you get there's a documentary of Picasso painting, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable to see how many times he's painting over and over and redoing things. And you say, it looks pretty good. And then he'll go on. And, well, that looks good. But he didn't stop. He's going on. It's like, it's almost like he's hunting for something. And he is. Actually, he is. He's hunting. It took me a long time to figure out because all these intermediate paintings look really cool. It's like, what's he looking for? What he's looking for, he's trying to surprise himself. He's trying to paint something that surprised him, something that he was not expecting. And so it's an iterative process where you kind of have to go through the obvious, easy, expected answers or solutions or drafts to get to something that surprises you and everybody else.
Can you share with us your last experiment that you are carrying?
The last experiment, well, every day I post some AI art that I make with my AI intern, and so on Twitter, and so that was the most recent experiment of. So I was experimenting with so when I'm doing the AI art, I try to surprise myself. Also, it's like, okay, I want to surprise myself, so I'll take different prompts, different media, and I'll say, well, let me play around with underground comics. There's a certain style in underground comics, but let me think about underground comics and and something else about roadside attractions, and I'll experiment with that, and I'll try different things, and these images even with the AI will take hours to get to. They're not just one thing you hit them. That's why they're art. You can't do it. It's like photography. You can't just sort of just take one picture. It's you have to kind of set it out and stalk and creep closer and move around. And how about this lighting? What about here? And you're in a conversation with the actual subject to try and find you to find it, to discover it. And the same thing with AI art. It's like hunting. It's like seeking. It's like photography in some ways. I'm looking for that best thing. So that was the most recent experiment, I would say, that I did. I also have been making, you can't see it here, but I've been making I decided my room needed a little tiny model railway around the perimeter, which I built, and I made I made a little town just to pretty up. And so I was doing 3D printing. The thing about 3D printing part's easy, but you have to make a model. You have to model something first, then to print it. And 3D modeling on the computer, that's a new skill. That's something that I don't know. So I have to kind of experiment with figuring out how to make a 3D model of the thing. And it's frustrating. I'm learning new. I have to throw things away. And you do that. You print something and you print it, and it's like, no, that's not what I'm thinking of. I need to go back. So it's never ending, but that's the joy.
Is there any life advice, this excellent advice that you have for younger generations and for its parents? Because this is changing, and the behavior, the routines, the interests.
I would say to a young person, if at all possible, you should try and work or find work or make work, or it's somewhere where there's not a word, there's no name for what it is that you're doing. So like 15 years ago, if you were doing what we're doing now, you'd be telling your mom, well, it's kind of like radio, but it's not quite radio. It's like an interview for a magazine, but it's on audio. It's like a documentary without any pictures. And today we would say it's podcasting. But 15 years ago, it would be new to have to explain it to somebody. And that would be a great place to have been 15 years ago. And so today, you're a prompt engineer, maybe. Nobody knows what that is, or you're working with AIs all day long. And that's a good place to be because there's no words, there's no name for what it is that you're doing. And there's plenty of other places that are the frontiers. They're ahead of their language. And so that's a great place to be when you're young, is fooling around in this place where there's no name for what it is to do. There's no economic reason necessarily for you to be there. There's no success path. There's no path to success through it. Those are all great reasons to be at that place and working, because later on that will become a place, and later on they will have a name for it, and it will become a thing. And so it's hard too, because it's lonely. You're often by yourself. It's hard to explain to people what it is, and you yourself don't even know what it is. And it's insecure, and it's marginal, and you're poor. But that's an advantage in the long term. Again, if you're wise, you understand that that's an advantage in the long term. All those qualities. Because you're poor, that means you can't buy solutions. You have to invent them yourselves. And therefore, you become valuable because you're inventing the things. A big company they can't invent them because they have too much money. They're just going to buy them.
And for their parents?
For parents, well, I would say if you have young kids, by far, the best schooling you can give them is to read out loud to them every day. That's the best schooling they'll ever have, if you read to them. And I would say one of the things I do regret not having done more with our 3 children was to have more rituals, family rituals. I would say in general, you want to emphasize
You change the camera, Kevin.
I'm sorry. Yeah, knocked it. Yeah.
No problem.
I knocked it with my hand.
Here you go.
I would say that was something that I kind of regret not doing with our kids, was have more family rituals, because I think the identity of a family is really important when a kid's growing up, and the rituals are even more important. And the rituals can be anything you do 3 times. 3 times in a row, it's a ritual. And it can be something as silly as cooking pancakes every Sunday morning, or doing pizza every Friday night and watching a movie, or having a birthday party with everybody wearing wigs. Whatever it is, if you do it on a regular, frequent basis, the anticipation of that from the kids is incredible. If they're anticipating it, it's a ritual. And what that ritual does is that they crave stability, reliability, consistency so much that in a world where things are changing all the time, they come back to these things that your family will do all the time, and they become an anchor. They become incredibly stabilizing. That whereas everything else could be changing around them, they know that there's going to be pancakes on Sunday morning, and they can rest there. And so the more rituals you do, the more it is. And as the kids, again, they seem really trivial, but as the kids get older, they take on more and more legendary proportions. Okay. And they look back on those, and again, they rest on them as an anchor of stability and reliability, knowing that, again, their lives can be difficult, things can be changing, there's disruptions and chaos, but there's pancakes on Sunday morning. Okay. And so
Never forget.
It costs nothing to do. It's cheap.
And you give so much energy and credit in the book, as you were saying, with the rituals for the family area. What's your take, apart from rituals, for families, generally speaking, from your own experience and living?
One ritual that we did with our kids that we felt was lacking in our culture, which was a rite of passage into adulthood. So there are things like a bar mitzvah, which is one variety, and other cultures have rituals,
vision quest.
vision quests, ceremonies that mark that. But in America, we didn't. So we invented our own, and your own family can invent them. And ours was something we did when our kids turned 21. And we had a little tiny family and small friends gathering. And for each child, we had a red ribbon tied around their waist and then tied around our waist. They were connected by a red ribbon. And we had a big set of scissors, and they would ceremoniously cut the cord, cut the umbilical cord from us, symbolizing that they were now separate from us. We're no longer tied to the cord. And then we had the first legal drink, a toast, the first legal drink at 21. And then we gave them their last check, saying, here's a check. This is your last check. You're on your own. And then they had each of the kids had their own version of what they wanted to do. My son decided he wanted everybody to write down some wisdom on an edible paper. And then he would read the wisdom from each person and then eat it, like a communion.
Oh, wow.
And my other daughter,
very powerful.
She wanted to be baptized with her family in a hot tub in our backyard. It's like, okay. So my other daughter baked bread for everybody and then fed everybody the bread that she had baked. And so there were different rituals, but that became the mark of going into adulthood that we could celebrate and that they can remember.
You were saying, like, in another bite of wisdom, it is possible that a not so smart person who communicates well can much better than a super smart who cannot communicate well. This is good news because it is much easier to improve your communication skills than your intelligence. So the question here is, how can we improve our communication skills efficiently?
Yeah.
From taking from this wisdom bite.
Yeah. Well, for me, what I've observed in people communicating better is basically working on empathy. Trying to read, what's the word I want? Trying to see what it was you're communicating from their point of view. So the great orators, the great politicians, the great communicators are able to connect with people and seemingly communicate because they are in some ways viewing the message from their point of view. They're empathetic. They're saying rather than what's my agenda in delivering it, what's the agenda of the person hearing it? What do they really want to know? What would matter to them? And it's in some ways turning it around and trying to see from the point of view of the receiver of that communication. And those that are really excellent at that have increased their skill in that form of empathy, of representing. And when I was editing Wired, one of the things that editing can do, when you're doing it well, is you represent the reader to the writer. So the writer's writing, and then you're reading it as representing the reader and responding to them, giving them the feedback to help them, saying, I don't understand this part. You need to make it clearer. So I would say, in a certain sense, having outside help, editors, is another very practical thing you can do to help your communication, which is working with someone else. So it takes more than one pair of eyes, as we say. You really do need others to help you see what works, what doesn't work. So editing and that function is another one. Empathy is the first one. And I think people who give talks like myself, one of the things that we're taught, which is true, is that most people can only remember 3 things at a time. And you want to, what the bit of advice I got from the Economist editors was simplify, and then exaggerate. So you want to kind of keep simplifying your message, and then once you get it to the core, then you kind of expand, you enlarge that simplification, you exaggerate it, and that ability to kind of make something really super simple and then expand it is what some of the best communicators do.
Kevin, can you share with us now in this moment, your top 5 life wisdom advice that you take from the book? I know it's 450, and I'm saying,
Yeah.
3. I will say, after what you said, I will say 3 before after another 5.
I would say, that thing that made you weird as a kid can make you great as an adult if you don't lose it. So think about that. I always have in mind some teenage boys who are into puppets. That's weird, right? Teenage boys who are doing puppets. Well, that turned out to be Jim Henson and the Muppets. He kept his weirdness. It made him great. And the guy, Kevin, I can't remember his name, Kevin Dalton, who was Elmo. He was a teenage boy into puppets. And Carol for Big Bird, the guy who became Big Bird. They were all into puppets as teenagers, and they were like really weird, but they didn't lose it. And that became their greatness later on. So that's one thing. I would say don't work for someone that you don't want to become. Right? Don't work for someone. Becoming is the thing. I would also say, while I talk a little bit about becoming yourself and being the best, not the only. I mean, being the only, not the best. I would emphasize that you can't truly become yourself by yourself. You actually need, this is a paradox. You actually need the entire world of everybody else to help you make yourself unique, right? Right. The only way that you could become truly unique is with the help of everybody else. Okay? That is a paradox, but it's true. And so you're on your way to become unique, but you can't do it by yourself. So if you can avoid seeking the approval of others, your power is limitless. You really do want to be internal driven. You want to be internally driven rather than responding to the outside world. That's a great skill. It takes, some people find it easier to do than others, but the thing that I know from being around the world, being among the poorest people of the world and among the richest people of the world, is that we all start at different levels unfairly, but we can all get improved in everything. And so that kind of confidence that you might have, it's going to vary from everybody to everybody in terms of what's naturally given to you, but you can always improve it. And so what habits are about is trying to improve the things, no matter where it is that we start. And whether it's confidence or gratitude or empathy whether it's being confident or not. Those are all skills and habits that we can get better at.
We head into the last questions, and I wanted to ask you, what's been the process of synthesizing more than 60 years of life in a small, direct, and self-explanatory keys that you have extracted from your own life?
I'm not sure I understand that exactly. Could you repeat that one more time?
How has been, or what's been the process for you of synthesizing more than 60 years of life in a small, direct, and self-explanatory keys that you have extracted from your own life?
Yeah. Well, the fact that even though the book is now done, there's 450, I still have more that I'm adding. So my life is not over. I still have stuff I'm learning. There's still, I still have lessons ahead of me. That's something that I've taken away. And secondly, this began in some ways as a gift to my children of literally things I wished I'd known earlier. And I would say the act of writing them down was actually beneficial to me as well. Part of the reason why I was writing them was to remind myself. These are reminders. These are 450 reminders. They're often things that we know, stuff that I knew already, but distilling them down into a little sentence makes them handy to repeat and remind myself. And they're meant for me. So I actually get value from the book by looking at it, by being reminded of things, of putting them in a way that I can tell myself at that time. It's always better to be kind than right. I have to tell myself that, right? You want to be easy to praise and slow to criticize publicly. Praise in public, criticize in private. I tell myself that. When somebody says something crazy or stupid on the internet, it's like, oh, no. Slow down. All right. Okay. Publicly praise. If you're going to criticize, do it privately. So these are reminders to me, and writing them down in this process has been helpful to give to me a tool set that I can remind myself with to improve my own behavior.
You say that habit is far more dependable than inspiration. Make progress by making habits. Don't focus on getting into shape. Focus on becoming the kind of person who never misses a workout.
Right.
What's the habit, or what's the most important and effective habit for you in this moment?
Every day I go for a walk for about an hour or more. That's a habit that I just love walking. I'm just feeling really good. It makes me feel good. I have lots of ideas when I walk. And so that's one habit that, and I have done it for many years. Either I walk or do a bike ride. And so that's one habit that's been very, very influential. The habit of making one art a day, making something every day, for me is a valuable habit.
And Kevin, 3 things you need: the ability to not give up something till it works, the ability to give up something that does not work, and the trust in other people to help you distinguish between the two.
Yeah.
There's a final question. What are from your experience the big keys for standing out today in this world?
Say that one more time. I didn't quite understand it. What
are from your experience the keys for standing out
for the key for standing out? Well, as I said, something that maybe makes you a little strange or weird or different, but I, I think it's an interesting question. I think the goal is not to stand out. I think that's a little bit of misguided. I think if you're trying to stand out, it can distort you, and lots of people do try to stand out, and it comes off as a gimmick. It comes off as something that is a persona, as something that is maybe inauthentic. I think you really want to strive to be the truest you, to be only and only you, to really try and find what it is that is among your unique combination of talents and abilities and life experiences that enables you to do something. And the byproduct of that will be you'll stand out, but that's not really the goal. It's sort of like, if you are really truly you, you're likely to be successful. You're likely to be unique and well regarded, but that's not the goal. The goal is to be you. And so if you're kind of more focused on the symptoms or whatever by trying to be famous or trying to be standing out. And so I think you kind of want to aim to understanding yourself, to trying to discover what your unique talents are, what you do best at, what you find easy that other people find hard. And from that, you'll be able to stand out.
The final bite you want to share with us, and a question to the listeners?
Yeah, a question to the listeners is a really good thing to worry about is what am I wrong about? Because it's very, very clear that I will be wrong about many things that I believe. I don't know what they are, but I would like to try and change my mind about them if I can. You and you and you and you are wrong about something. And a question you want to be ask yourself is, what am I wrong about?
Thank you so much, Kevin. Where people can find your book and can get more information about you?
Right. So the book is Excellent Advice for Living. Bookstores should have it. Amazon, of course, has it. If you want more of me, it's at my initials, KK.org. So it's very simple, just my initials, KK. And I'm Kevin2, the number 2 Kelly, Kevin2 Kelly on the socials, where I post my art.
We will be sharing this in the podcast show notes. Godspeed, and we will stay in touch for next projects, and
Sure.
keep inspiring us. And thank you for
Alrighty.
sharing your moment. Take care. Bye,
Excellent.
Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This has been Kevin Kelly, an excellent advice for living. All the wisdom Kevin would wish known earlier. Kevin said, there is no such thing as being on time. Either you are late or you are early. This your choice. And I have a question for you. How do you manage time nowadays, and what's your relationship with time? Next wisdom advice, next bite that Kevin wrote in the book, spending as little as 15 minutes, 1% of your day, on improving how do you do your thing is the most powerful way to amplify and advance your thing. And I have a question for you. Can you elaborate on what can you do on a daily basis, 15 minutes a day, 1% every day, to improve in your skill, your art, on your purpose? Next, I have a question for you, which is, what's your favorite quote on the podcast, on this episode? And have you read the book? If so, What's your highlight on the most important, on the most impactful quote for you? I want to end this podcast with two quotes that really, two wisdom bites that really grab my attention and I put at the end of the interview to close and wrap up. One is, whenever you cannot decide which path to take, pick the one that produces change. And that's very powerful. When you don't know the answer, look for the positive impact. And the second one is what Kevin already shared with us is aim to die broke. Give to your beneficiaries before you die. It's more fun and useful to them. Spend it all. Your last check should go to the funeral. And it should bounce. Aim to die broke. This has been Kevin Kelly for Disrupt Everything podcast series. His second appearance, his second interview. First is how to learn on how not to be the best, but how to be the only one. And I will share the interview in the podcast show notes. And this second interview about his last book, like 450 bytes on life wisdom in every topic that covers what means to be alive. As you have seen in the interview, you have any question for Kevin, for me, you can leave it in the comments. Thank you for being in Disrupt Everything podcast series. This is Isra Garcia, and let's keep dancing with the moment. Let's keep making it happen. Thank you, and enjoy the ride.